Hello, welcome back to the channel, everyone that's tuned in. Braden and I bringing to you guys another video, American Ultra Stock. Here we are to analyze how the transfers from the summer window have panned out so far. Braden, we had a lot of players move. It was an exciting summer. A lot of players needed a move. A lot of them got one. And here we are to rank on the tier list format how they actually are turning out to be. There's still time for them to turn around if it hasn't gone so well. And talking about that, we have to start about the player who probably had one of the best transfers on paper, but it hasn't been so good lately. You're a huge fan of him. Brandinho, how do you analyze how his season's going so far, Braden? Where would you rank it on the tier list?
Listen, I'm the biggest Brendan Aronson fan probably in the world, but I have to admit it's been an absolute disaster so far. For one reason or another, you can blame him, you can blame the manager, you can blame the team in general, because the entire team has been horrible this season, regardless of whether he's playing or not. Can't deny that. They seem to have been a one-season wonder last year. I think playing extra games in Europe kind of got into their heads a little bit. I don't think they're used to the fixture congestion. They don't really have the squad depth. But regardless of the reason, the season's just gone really badly, and it's at the point where they might even terminate his loan in this winter window. He could go back to Leeds. He could go somewhere else. We really don't know, which is scary for me because I don't even know where I'd want him to go at this point. I think Eredivisie would probably be the best spot, but if we're going to rate this transfer, I think for now it has to be an F, unfortunately.
I agree. It's really unfortunate. And the biggest disappointment from this is that he's not going to get at least even a glimpse of a comeback season, which is what he needed. Last year wasn't as atrocious as some people make it out to be. I think there were a lot more factors involved. Just like this time around, it's not necessarily his performances, just the club in general. And I got to say, Serginho dodged a bullet when he didn't go there. I remember for a time it was linked to them, and I think that the entire club has been a little bit misled in what direction they're going to go, and it turns out that Brendan is in the same position now too, because we really don't know where he should go and how it's going to turn out. I'm going to agree with you. It goes as an F for me, which could be, I could have definitely envisioned this transfer being an A or an S tier one if it had gone as it had promised. Now going on to the next player on the list. Let's see where you rank Tyler Adams' transfer. This one's tough to grade. Where would you put it, Braden? You can analyze it. You can give his where would you think he would rank in terms of season personally, not the transfer so much in itself, but it all goes together. Where would you rank it?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention quickly, I put these players in alphabetical order by last name, so it's completely random. It's not based on who played the best. It's just a random order. And these are probably the 15 most prolific transfers that we had this summer. There's a lot more, so let us know in the comments if you guys want to see us analyze some of the under-the-radar transfers, because there was a lot this summer for players that aren't even on the radar of the USMNT. So if you guys want to see us analyze those as well, let us know in the comments, and we'd be happy to bring that out for you guys. But getting on Tyler Adams to Bournemouth, I'm not going to call it a bad transfer because he hasn't been able to prove anything. He's just been unlucky with injuries. I'd put it in C because I think that's the most incomplete tier that there is. There's nothing to really go off of. I think if he was playing, I think he'd do well. We saw him last season with Leeds. He was one of the only bright spots in that team that ended up getting relegated. And I do think if he wasn't injured mid-season, they probably would have stayed up. So Bournemouth are playing all right this season. Pretty mid-table. So I would say they're pretty safe from relegation right now. But I think with Tyler Adams, they'd be into the next level, maybe even pushing for top half. But that's all to be determined later. And obviously, I think this goes without saying, but it's only been half a season for all these guys. There's still so much time for them, maybe some more than others, but there's a lot of time for these guys to turn it around or even push to new heights. But for now, Tyler Adams has to be a C because he hasn't been able to play.
Fair point. I think objectively speaking, if we're rating his transfer, I would agree with you. I'll put him at a C. In terms of his season, even though it's not his fault, I'd probably rank it a little bit lower. But in terms of transfers, it's a good one because you're right. They're not going to have a relegation scare, in my opinion. I think they're doing just fine. So it sets the foundation for a good future for him, hopefully, at Bournemouth. Now, moving on to the next player, Serginho Dest. He really needed a transfer. Really nice that he got one. I'll let you take it away. Where would you rank it?
Yeah, Serginho Dest making the first good decision transfer-wise of his career, and couldn't have come soon enough because this summer was absolutely critical for him. It was kind of a breaking point in his career, I would say, because if he chose the wrong move, that would have been 3 clubs in a row where he failed, and at that point, it's not looking good for him. But what a turnaround he's had at PSV and the entire team in general. One of the best Eredivisie regular season teams we've seen ever. I think it's fair to say they're on pace. I don't know if a team's ever won every single game, and they've done that so far halfway through the year. For Dest personally, I can't put him at the top. I can't put him in S tier just because in the Champions League they are through, but he did get exposed a little bit against Arsenal in that first game when they were playing their A teams. I mean, it's to be expected. He's going against Bukayo Saka, who's one of the best wingers in the world, but it's still a little bit concerning for me that he hasn't been able to progress with his defending too much. And I do think that's the one downside of being in the Eredivisie. He's not going against the highest quality of attackers, especially since most of the best attackers in the league play for PSV. So he's going against them in training maybe, but not in a game situation where it matters. And I think we saw that in some of the international breaks as well so far at the end of the season for the USMNT. His defending, it's not getting better, and his offensive skills do seem to be getting better. He finally scored his first goal. He's having a good season, don't get me wrong, but I would like to see a little improvement on the defensive side, so it's an A for me.
Yeah, I think I would completely agree, and we didn't really do this before, guys. It's completely genuine. I rank it as an A because, as Braden said, there's not much left to be said. He did make a crucial move. It was a turning point, breaking point in his career. If he gets the wrong club, honestly, MLS, we never know because it was at that point already. He has the quality to perform at these great competitions, and I think that he's showing it. And I think that a step back in order to give 2 steps forward in the future is definitely what he needed. It's turning out a good season, so I'm happy. But I agree with you. There's still a lot to improve on because I may be one of the biggest Serginho Dest fans in the world. I think it very highest level, but for now, I would agree, an A. Now the next player, a bit of a controversial one. Again, it's in alphabetical order, as Braden said, and we don't know. He's American. He was born here. He speaks English, doesn't speak Italian, doesn't get played even in there. So we'll include him here, trying to bring in the energy that maybe he will choose the U.S. Luca Koleosho, what a season he's having. Where did you rank his transfer, which came out of nowhere? He was a player that didn't really need a transfer, and this happens. Playing in the Premier League now, Braden, how would you grade it so far?
Yeah, we've had Koleosho in so many videos recently. Hopefully he sees them and decides to choose us. But yeah, this was a really unexpected transfer when it happened. Going from Espanyol, who just get relegated to the second La Liga, and he wasn't even really playing there. He got a couple minutes at the end of the season. He showed some bright spots, but clearly Burnley saw something that the rest of the world didn't, and their scouts completely paid off for them. I think he's been one of their only bright spots this season. It is unfortunate because he did just pick up a long-term injury, and honestly, I don't want to say it too prematurely, but it looks to have sealed Burnley's fate. They're in the relegation zone, 6 points clear of Nottingham Forest, who are the last remaining team in 17th place. And with Koleosho out, one of their brightest attacking sparks for an extended period of time, I don't see it getting any easier for them. I do think they'll get relegated, but I still don't think that's a bad thing for him because he would have gone from playing in La Liga 2 to now playing in the Championship and getting some very valuable experience and exposure in the Premier League. That's always good for a young player. And who knows, maybe even another team will buy him because he does have so much talent and potential that I think maybe a mid-table team could see that and recognize it and actually want to keep him in the league. But for now, rating the transfer, I think I'm going to give it a B. I think he's been good personally, but the struggles for Burnley are there, so it can't be too high.
Oh, this will be our first disagreement. I'll rank it as an A. I see it, especially on the point that you said, even if he goes down, I think it's still a step up from what we envisioned. If you had told me at this point last year that Luca Koleosho would be a Premier League player, doing well, getting assists, goals, and being influential, I would have thought that that's unbelievable, really. And yeah, like you said, props to the Burnley scouts. He did score that really nice goal towards the end of the year for Burnley. You can rank it in B or A, but I would say on a season personal level from him, I'll rank it as an S. But as a move, I think A, B whatever one of those is still really good. It's unbelievable, really. And let's see. I think you touched on a point. I'll just leave a brief mention. If they go down, depending on how he comes back before the end of the season with a long-term injury, I don't think he goes down with them. I think someone's going to scoop him up, and that gives it's a testimony to how well he's been doing. Now, going on to another youngster who was doing national too, is doing national, but Yunus Musa, he needed a move desperately from Valencia. Things weren't looking up at all last year. It was a club situation, his performances. He got the move that he wanted. It was a step which some people thought was maybe a little bit premature because it's still a huge club and he just got the move. He's still so young. But how would you rate it so far?
I think getting out of Valencia in itself was an S because the situation there was absolutely horrible. Somehow they're doing a lot better this season, so props to them for performing well on a very very difficult club situation. But it was what's best for everyone at the time. But that being said, I don't think AC Milan was the right move. I think I said this when he did make the transfer in the summer. It's just too big of a step. Going from almost relegated to the second La Liga to a Champions League contender, a team who was in the semifinals last year, and expecting to be at the level. He is playing a lot for them, which I do like. I like the confidence that Pioli has put in him, but I think he's looked a little bit lost sometimes. No fault of his own. I'm not going to criticize him too heavily because he is still such a young player. I think he's only 20 years old. Like I said, it's a huge step up for him, and he has to adjust. And I think he's doing a decent job of that. But just for now, I think I'd put him in the C tier because I don't think he's been showing the quality that AC Milan would want out of a center midfielder. I think he's going to be good for them in the future, don't get me wrong. I think if we regraded this in a couple of years, I think he'd be a lot higher. But just as for now, the first half of the season that he had, I don't think I can put it higher than a C.
I completely agree. I'm at a C as well because honestly, people are going to think I'm a Musa hater at this point, but I don't think he's had a good game all season. I think he's had okay games, almost good games, but from what I expect, good games. He hasn't, even for the national team as well. He's had some shaky moments. So I agree. It was a step. I would much rather be watching him play for a smaller club, for a Monza, getting regular minutes than at Milan. Would be better for his development, but maybe not. What do I know? But anyways, I agree. I think it's a C. Now the next one, Jordan Pefok. He got a move. He's going very under the radar for a lot of fans. Not having a bad season at all, but he got a move. And, well, it seems like he dodged a bullet, too, leaving that club that is at the moment. So that in itself can be an S tier, but where would you rate his transfer?
I think it's funny because Union Berlin loaned him out to Gladbach because they didn't see a spot for him in the team. And now they're 3 spots below Gladbach in the league table. It's just an interesting situation. It's funny how football can work out sometimes. But for Pefok, he's had a quietly decent season. He hasn't been playing too much because he's had injury issues. He is injured right now, as is all of our players, because that's just the American trait, it seems. But he had a really good run of form right before the injury, and I think it sucks because kind of like Josh Sargent earlier in the season, he was putting together his best run of form and just got injured. And it's kind of the same thing for Daryl DK whenever he's healthy as well. He always puts together, all of our strikers seem to put together a bunch of good games and then just get injured. But I think just because of that, I put him in a low B. I think he's been better. I think it's too harsh to put him on the same tier as Adams and Musa. Now that I'm looking at it, maybe Musa should move up a little or Adams should move down. But yeah, I think Pefok B, maybe we move Adams down a little bit. I'd be fine with a B or a C here. He's had some good games, but he is 27 and injuries are not helpful at that point in your career.
Yeah, but as a transfer, really, I agree. I'll say it is a solid B, really. I think it is a transfer. He had up, really. He fell upward, let's say. And yeah, I agree. I think it's a B. It's so sad that these guys keep getting injured. He was in a really, really good strength form, not only just in numbers, but playing well too. But anyway, I think it's fair to put him in a B. Now, you said a lot of our players, our strikers particularly, they play and get injured. This one doesn't play that much as we want, but he never gets injured, always delivers. Has had, I think, the highest of highs in his career so far. He put them through to the next round Ricardo Pepi, I think his season could have gone any better so far, really. Well, it could have if he played more, but in terms of performances. But as a transfer, where would you rate it, Braden?
This might be crazy considering the amount of playing time he's getting, but I would actually put him in S because I love the experience that Luke de Jong has, and what he can teach Pepe, I think, is going to be super valuable. PSV clearly see Pepe as their future of the striker position. I think he's going to be there for several more years until hopefully he inevitably gets sold to a big club after impressing. I'm hoping that can happen, but even if not, if he can just be the future of PSV, I don't think that's a bad thing at all for him because they are a big club in the Netherlands, always fighting for the league title, always performing in Europe a little bit. So I think it's been all right. Even though he hasn't been playing, it's kind of the same situation for the national team as well. In the limited minutes he gets, he's so effective. So much so that despite not starting at all until I think the second leg of the Trinidad game all year for the USMNT, he was still up in the ballot for Player of the Year. That just shows how effective he's been and how prolific he's been in front of goal, despite the limited minutes. So I'd put him in S, and I think the minutes are just going to continue to come as he continues to progress and gets more comfortable within the system.
I completely agree. I don't even mind that he's not getting that many minutes because he's being so prolific. If that wasn't the case, I would just rather watch him play regularly, get confident, but it doesn't seem to hit his confidence at all. I think that Pepe, just speculation, but he seems to go really well with the flow of his career. He has a clear vision. He did the right steps when things weren't working in Augsburg. He revived his career at Groningen. Even though they went down, he did enough to get a move to such a huge club. Got a memorable moment there and does so well for the national team too. It seems like his confidence is still high, playing really well, getting good minutes. I can't put it anything below than an S, so I'll rank him up there as well. And for the next one, I'll be very short and brief. I mean, the revival, the comeback of Captain America, Pulisic, I'll put him as an S. Where would you rank him, Braden?
I actually disagree slightly here. I'd put him as an A because I think as our best player and as a player that we hope have aspirations for, and we've seen a little bit of flashes in the past, that he can be world class. We saw it lockdown at Chelsea. And honestly, I think his Champions League performances this year haven't been up to par. In the league, he's been sensational. Don't get me wrong. I think he's been one of AC Milan's best players, but I do think it's been a slightly underwhelming season for them as a whole. They're not doing too great in the league. They seem to be at more of a risk of falling out of the top four entirely than winning the title, which is not a spot that you'd want to be in at this point in the season. And obviously, they finished third in one of the hardest Champions League groups I've seen in several years, mind you, but you still should be trying to get out of that as a semifinalist last year. And the fact that they're going to the Europa League just shows that some of their players didn't step up in the biggest moments. So for that reason, I'd put Pulisic at an A, but it's still one of his best seasons, and he's on pace to maybe have his best season ever. So no complaints from me.
Yeah, I just analyzed it purely from how low last season was, but I agree, that's completely fair. But I'm really happy that he's getting minutes, really happy that he's doing well for his confidences. And again, we're outsiders just speculating, but it seems like it was a very fragile state mentally at Chelsea, and so many people hating on him. I think it's a complete turnaround in terms of vibes, and he seems to enjoy his time there. So, but that's a good evaluation as well. Going on to another player who wouldn't even be relevant to include in this list if he didn't do what he did last weekend, but Tabby, where would you rank his transfer? He's getting minutes here and there. Where would you put it, Braden?
I think the fact that he came from Denmark and he hasn't been out of the first team already, been kicked out, I think is an accomplishment of itself because I don't rate him too highly. He's got a lot of pace, and he had one very good game. He got in the team of the week in the AFC. Shout out to him for that. But yeah, it's just been a very meh season for me. I'd put him in D, but I think that one game alone warrants a boost in tier. So I'll put him in C because it was a very good game. Honestly, up there for one of the best games we've seen an American have all season. But besides that game, he's been very lackluster, I think. And I just think he doesn't really fit the system at all because he's a very flashy player, I would say, pacey, prolific winger. And Le Havre are a very defensive team, a very stout, and they don't really like attacking very much. So I think a better team would have fit him, just maybe more free-flowing, more attacking. But the fact that he's in Ligue 1 and doesn't look completely out of place is an accomplishment within itself.
I agree. He should have gone to Venezia. We all know that. I agree. I'll put him in C, really, honestly. As you said, I'll lean more towards a C than a D because it's a huge step up. And that game is definitely a major factor in putting him in C. But he's getting minutes there, and they seem to be pretty safe too, which is good. It enables him a good platform for the future. So I think that's fair. And now moving on to the next player. He got, I'm not going to say, I'll just leave it to you. Slonina. Where would you rate his transfer so far? This one is definitely a lot of discussion could be done for this one.
I think that this transfer is probably the most up for debate as when it comes to ranking for out of all the ones on this list, because I think from certain perspectives you can put him near the top, and from other perspectives you can put him near the bottom. And unfortunately for Slonina, I'm not going to be too kind. I would put them in D, because I think he went from being in the summer, being the future of Chelsea. Not saying like he's going to come into the team right away, but he was playing for them a little bit in preseason. He seemed like, okay, in a couple of years he can be the future. Now it's a huge question mark. I don't think he has a future there. I don't think he'll ever play a single meaningful minute there. He's just going to get a permanent transfer to some small club in a couple of years. And I do like the fact that he's getting a lot of reps. I like the fact that he's in a pretty solid league. I really like the Belgian Pro League. Besides their playoff system, I'm not a fan of that. But yeah, just the amount of goals that he's letting in isn't healthy for him, for a player. It's just not good for the confidence. Despite the amount of saves he's making, the defense isn't helping him at all. And with that many shots going at you, you're bound to make some mistakes. And we've seen that in the recent couple of games. One bad one in particular that caught my eye. So I would put him in a D. It's not like indicative of his future at all. He's still 19, I think, maybe 20. He has a lot of years ahead of him. He's still very young for a goalkeeper, but I think this year has kind of opened our eyes a little bit that maybe he doesn't have the potential we thought he did. Maybe Chris Brady's better than him. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's too crazy of a take, but I'd put him in D.
I don't think it's too crazy of a take. The clubs do mask, put a lot of makeup on how the players really perform. But I think I really don't know where to rank this one. I'll put it as a D as well. The one thing that I will hold on to try to be optimistic with this move is the fact that Emiliano Martinez, the Argentina goalkeeper, a long time ago, there was a game. I used to watch a lot more soccer than I do now, specifically Arsenal. And he had a terrible game against Reading or Reading, and he's conceded 5 goals. And I thought, this goalkeeper sucks. He went on loan multiple times, set terrible loans at small clubs, and turned out to be a great keeper. So, and he never had the promise that Slonina does. So I'll hold on to that and hope that this is, hey, if he's bound to make mistakes and learn, why not just do it at a club where it doesn't even mean anything? No one's really going to fault him because they're conceding so many chances. He's bound to make mistakes. He's not going to be the focal point. It's never going to be pinpointed that he's the reason why they're so low on the table. So hold on to those aspects to say that it's not that bad of a transfer. He's getting minutes. Young goalkeeper, so young for a goalkeeper. But I agree. Ultimately, it's not a good move because I'd much rather, I've said it so many times on the channel, much rather see our young guys specifically develop the he's-him mentality where they get used to winning, being relevant, and being in good positions. And ultimately, this move doesn't really give him that. But for those reasons that I said, I'll hold on and try to see a silver lining here. Moving on to the next player. Melik Tillman got a move, and he went to PSV. Ernie Stewart really loves bringing in the Americans. We love that too. And where would you rate his transfer so far?
Well, if we were rating Ernie Stewart, he'd be up an S, because what a guy he has been for U.S. soccer this season, bringing in 3 of our most high-profile Americans for the club, and it's worked out perfectly for all of them. And I'd put Tillman up in S as well, up there with Pepe. I think the PSV boys are going to be at the top of this list, as they should be, because they're having potentially one of the best seasons for a club in Europe in general. I think if Ajax were having this type of season, they'd be viewed as Champions League contenders. I'm not saying that PSV are Champions League contenders. I don't think they're that good, but I'm just saying the name behind Ajax carries a lot more weight than the name behind PSV. And PSV are having a much better season than Ajax have in a long time in the Eredivisie. But yeah, I'd put Tillman up in S. I think he's been performing very well, and he just keeps getting better. He had that one incident where he slept through his alarm, and it looked like maybe he wasn't cut out to be at this sort of level as a professional. The maturity wasn't there, but he's bounced back completely from that he just keeps getting better. Every single game he keeps getting better. Peter Bosz even said it's scary how good he was against Arsenal. 5 goals and 4 assists in all competitions, and yeah, just more to come for the 21-year-old.
Yeah, I will say this was amazing. What an amazing move. I think that he didn't envision how well this move would out, because there were moments in the summer where he was playing for the Beast, for the young side, and it turned out to be a great season. He's an instrumental part of this. He's not a starter, but he is the 12th player, really. And the team that, as you said, PSV, they have already won the league. In my opinion, unless they do the biggest choking in history, they already won the league. And I agree with you. The name Ajax carries a lot more weight. If it was them, people would be a lot more impressed. I agree. I'll put him up there as an S, honestly. Going from Rangers to some iffy performances against Celtic, and now performing so well for PSV. He really emerged from the out as well. What a nice season for him. Now, going on to the next player, Trusty. Where would you rank this transfer, Braden?
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, I don't think it'd even be the biggest choke this year after we saw Botafogo in the Brasileirão. But yeah, Trusty is an interesting one for me because honestly, I didn't view this guy as a Premier League footballer, and I'm probably his biggest fan as well. All the former Union products, I think you guys all know by now how much I love them. But I didn't think he'd be in the Premier League this year. I thought he'd go back to the Championship, maybe a promotion contender for sure. But the fact that he's in the Premier League, getting solid minutes finally, he had a bit of time to adjust. And I think the change of managers really helped him out. He's been playing center back in a back 3, in a back 4. He's been playing left back a little bit. And he's looked very trusty, not to play on words there. But he's just looked like a solid player. I don't know if he's at the Premier League level because obviously Sheffield United are probably the worst team in the league, I think it's fair to say. But he hasn't looked out of place necessarily. So I think it's been a pretty good season. I'm going to put him in B.
Yeah, I would actually rank it as an A, honestly. I think going from where I agreed with you. And there were some rumors I thought he was going to be at Ipswich, that type of club. And then he turns out to be playing Premier League, playing well. I agree with you. The change of manager, it was bound to happen too for the results that were happening in the beginning of the season. He hasn't been involved in the massacre, so I'm happy with that. I think I would rank it as an A, B, whichever one you think. I think it's so nice to see Trusty really becoming a realistic option for the U.S. starting center back spot for the U.S. Really, fair to say, at least the immediate backup. I think he's earned that. Now we talked about him doing well in the Premier League. This other player, Matt. He had a move we all envisioned, the perfect plan. Matt's going to be a starter. It's best to not be just a side character at Arsenal, and he goes to Nottingham Forest. Granted to say he's had a very eventful season, and judging by those events, if you want to expand on those, Braden, where would you rank his transfer so far?
I don't even know where to begin for Matt Turner. He joins in the summer. It looks like he's finally getting his starting move. And then, a week or two later, they buy Vlachodimos just to say, okay, Turner, you can fight for your spot. So he goes from being a backup at Arsenal, one of the biggest clubs in the world, to being a backup at Nottingham Forest, who are fighting for their life to even stay in the league. And honestly, if the 3 promoted sides weren't as bad as they were, I think they're all historically bad. This is one of the worst crop of promoted sides I've seen in decades, honestly. If they weren't also bad, Forest would be in the relegation zone by far. It wouldn't even be close. And he's honestly a lot to blame for that. I'm not saying Vlachodimos has been better than him. I think they've both been bad, to be honest. I'll call once again, Nottingham Forest, please give Horvath a chance. He needs it more than anything. I think he's going to become clinically depressed or something with all these lack of minutes he's getting. But for Matt Turner, it can't be anything more than an F. And this might be a hot take, but I think he's had even worse of a season than Brendan Aronson. Because I think for Aronson, he's kind of in the product of a team that isn't clicking, and he's not really the focal point of it or getting the most minutes or anything like that. He hasn't really been to blame. I can't pick out a bunch of moments where Aronson cost them points. I can pick out a lot of moments where Matt Turner cost Nottingham Forest points, and that cost him to get benched once, and he's probably going to get benched again after a couple more games. Maybe even the next game, who knows. But yeah, he has to be an F, and it's just a complete lapse of judgment. he's hit his peak. He hit his peak out last year, maybe 2 years ago. It was a good run, but I think it's time to move on. Hopefully someone else can step up.
Yeah, we need someone else to step up. And people say, "Oh, he's been good for the national team." I feel like people they overlook a lot of Turner's mistakes because he's such a nice guy. He seems like such a sound guy, and I wish he was so good because he does seem like such a genuinely nice person. But even the moments that his mistakes have been so bad, that horrible mistakes as well, costly mistakes have been overlooked. I always go back to the Liverpool game. People look at that atrocious moment and forget that the first goal, he parries the ball right on McAllister's foot. A horrible save, routine save, and he parries it right and concedes the first goal of the game. That dictates how the game's going to go. So I feel like this season, I agree, it has to be a complete. There's no way that you can rate this any other way, in my opinion. And we definitely need someone to step up. That position is up for grabs as well. Apart from Jedi, I'll say the entire backline is really up for grabs. But the thing is, right back, we are well served for someone to step up. But anyways, moving on to another player that has played right back, right wing back, everywhere. Tim Weah, he moved to Juventus. It was a huge step up in terms of clubs. How do you rate his season so well, the transfer in itself so far, Braden?
Tim Weah, the player without a position. Kind of becoming like Dest, where he's moving all around the pitch, and I don't think it's really worked anywhere. I think it was too big of a step up. He was still struggling to find valuable minutes at Lille. He was playing left back, right back, just out of position. He wasn't looking bad by any means for them, but I think he should have moved to a club where he could have played his favorite position, especially if he wants to keep his spot at right wing for the national team, especially with players like Luka Kolyasha who could come in and be recruited. I think he'd immediately slot into Weah's spot, just the way that things have been looking this season. So I don't know if this is too harsh, but I'd put Weah in a D, to be honest, because I think a lot of our fans overhype him a lot. I think they view him as one of our best players, and in reality, I think he's one of the most vulnerable within our starting 11. And the fact that he's getting replaced as a right wing back who has to track up and down the pitch, a lot of running involved, by a guy who was deemed as too fat for the Premier League and one of the worst players in the Premier League last season. A shout out to Weston McKennie, by the way. What a turnaround for him this season. I don't think it's been talked about enough, but he didn't make a transfer, so we can't talk about him too much in this video. But the fact that Weah lost his spot to McKennie, who's also playing out of position, neither of them play right wing back, but Weah is supposed to be there. They bought him specifically for that spot. He's out of the lineup. He got injured for a little bit. He's back, but he's still on the bench, not getting as many minutes as he should be, or he would have anticipated. So I'm going to put him in D. I don't know if it's too harsh.
I think it's kind, really. I'm not a Weah hater, but I put him as an F, really. Him going to Juventus, I thought he was going to step up, and it's not granted too much of his fault, but I felt like he was really going to slot in there. There was definitely a position for the taking for him to cement himself as a starter. I'm sorry if it sounds harsh, but I think it's an F, really. He becomes a player without a position, leaves himself even more vulnerable for the national team. And I'm telling you, if, and I hope when, Luka Kolyasha commits to the U.S., we somehow find and arrange a spot for him to take in the starting lineup, and that spot's going to be Weah's. And I don't think that Weah is a unanimous decision, really, to be a starter by any means at this moment as well. If he's not playing right wing, why is he going to be a right winger for the national team? So I'm sorry, in my opinion, it's an F. But I agree with a D. We'll leave it as a D if you want, because it's a little bit kinder, and I feel like F definitely sounds harsh, but in my opinion, it's an F. Well, what an L of a transfer, really. Even though he went to a bigger club, he went to just warm the bench, really, and not have a position. That's the most concerning thing, in my opinion. He doesn't have a position. He's been playing everywhere, really, but his position, which we all hyped him up to be such a good player at. But now moving on to the next one, the final one. Haji Wright got a move, a nice move on paper. How do you think things are panning out so far for him, Braden? Where would you rank his one?
To close out this video, I'd give Haji Wright a B, because I think there was a lot of growing pains at the beginning, and I was pretty critical in one of our stock watch videos early on in the season. It looked like he might even be set for a January exit. Coventry weren't playing well, he wasn't playing well, but he's started to get his form back, he's scoring goals. A lot of them are tap-ins, I will admit, but part of being a striker, a poacher, is being at the right place at the right time, and Haji Wright seems to have mastered that. So props to him for settling into Coventry, proving the doubters wrong, and I think he's had a quietly decent season.
I agree. I would actually rank this one as B, A, I don't know really, because I feel like it's such a good move to move on from Turkey, who, let's be honest, nobody watches that. Nobody watches and nobody wants that. If your brother moves and plays there, you're like, oh, that's so cool, but you're not going to turn on the games unless he tells you to do so. And going to the championship, which does, there's always a chance. You never know. There's always a chance in a gamble that some club's going to gamble on you and you become a Premier League backup player, or your club gets promoted. You never know. And he hasn't looked out of place by any means. I think he is a championship level player, which is not bad at all. I think he's having, like you said, a quietly good season, and his movement, and you can say luck, but if you want to, but I'll prefer to put it into a tactical awareness, has been superb, really. He always scores, so it's really nice to see. I'll put him up there as well. But thank you very much, guys, for watching. We know this was a little bit lengthier, but we wanted to give the players justice again. There was a lot to talk about, all of them. We had a lot of fun. Thank you, Brayden, for setting up the tier list. Again, you guys, please let us know in the comments if you enjoy this type of content. We had a blast. It was really nice to see how some of our guys are doing. And again, this is not any hate towards the players. It's just our opinion on how their season have been going so far. And who knows, maybe by the end of the season, some of these players will get their ranks up and we won't even need a D or an F on this tier. You know. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with your friends if you can. We really appreciate that. And we'll see you next time.